And we are back with another episode of the Hockey Princess podcast. I am your host, the Hockey Princess. We have Crusty, old guy, once and again. Guys, just as a reminder, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, however you watch or listen to us ramble on a weekly basis. Guys, it's the off season right now for the Blackhawks, so now is your time to send us in any questions that you have about them or the hockey in general, the NHL, really anything. We love answering questions.
Yes, if you're worried about your investments in these troubling times, feel free to ask us a question about it. Crusty old guy will definitely help you out.
Here we go. Let's get into it. Christy, we got more postseason to talk about. We're not in it, but some other teams are. This will change because right now we're recording on Tuesday and this will come out on Thursday. However, right now, I believe because none of the games have finished up for today, the entire Western Conference is locked 2-2 and the entire Eastern Conference is locked 3-1.
You would be correct.
So it's wackadoo up in here.
It is. It's some do and some whack.
That is true. Let's get into our first matchup. We can just do a round robin like last time. We got Winnipeg and St. Louis. Guys, I'm so sad. And I'm starting to be slightly concerned because if Winnipeg gets knocked out, then my bracket is useless. And I really just don't want to watch Jordan Binnington play any more hockey, if I'm going to be honest.
Well, yeah, and it already looks like my bracket's worthless, so I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
Oh, I stand corrected. The only one of the West that is different is Dallas is up 3-2 in the series.
Correct. Yeah. As far as Winnipeg,
What the hell, Connor?
Connor is starting to get a rep of just not being a playoff goaltender, and this is not helping. Full disclosure, I haven't watched a lot of the last two games, so maybe that's why. Maybe I'm the problem. But and St. Louis is talented. They have offense. They are very structured. They play very good defense, and if they have a lead, they know how to protect it. Again, there's the age-old adage of a series never starts until the home team loses. So if you go that route, well, hasn't even started yet. So game 5 will be pivotal. And yeah, I don't I don't know what to say about the Buck, except they go out in the first round and it becomes a complete trend.
Yeah.
Of he's a great regular season goaltender, but can't do anything in the playoffs. That is your Freddie Anderson reputation. There's others who have that, and whether it's justified or not, that's just the way it is.
Right.
Your team has to produce in the playoffs. So, not looking good.
Nope. Next matchup, we've got Dallas versus Colorado. Dallas is currently up 3-2 in the series. It's been very tight. It's been very entertaining. I'm becoming more in love with the Harley kid on Dallas, and looks like, if I believe so, that Miro Heiskanen is close-ish to being ready, and Robertson is not.
Yeah.
And Landeskog got his first goal, which, regardless of what team that you're cheering for and what team that you cheer for on a regular basis, it's a great thing to see.
Yeah, and that series has been pretty rock and roll. I figured Colorado would take care of business at home, and that wasn't the case in Game 3. And they're getting a little bit of inspiration from Landeskog, but it's starting to turn out that shut down McKinnon, shut down that line, and you can play with them. There's not enough depth scoring going on anywhere else, which has always been part of Colorado's game, and at the end of the day, right now, be it through Dallas's defense or whatever else, Makar just looks like a defenseman. Um, a good defenseman, but not a
Right.
superstar.
Yeah.
Usual what as I stated in this series, I thought that was the difference maker. Is just he is that good. He takes over games. He has yet to take over a game. So there you have it. And the other God, I really need to stop doing that. And I keep on thinking about it whenever I listen to this show that I can't do that. So I'm gonna mentally reset right now. Okay, and now we're gonna try to work on that a little bit. That'll last 2 minutes, like all the rest of my mentally resetting I do on a hourly basis. But see what I did there? I was gonna do it, and then I didn't. As I stated at the beginning of this series, um, Blackwood. All of your eggs are in the Blackwood basket. Um, that might not work out all that well. He's never been a proven complete stud goaltender. Um, I was walking the dog in the first period of the Dallas game yesterday, and they got the Dallas feed on the XM radio, and boy, they said the first two goals were the luckiest goals they've ever seen in the NHL ever. It was, if you can ever do that every once in a while, just listening to a homer feed is just quite impressive. So right now, I mean, Dallas is motoring. Again, Heiskanen might be back. Robertson, I would assume, is still 3 weeks away. I mean, that's a knee issue. But Dallas has enough talent. The young kids, your Rope Hintz and your Wyatt Johnson showed up last night, and that's the difference maker. If they can roll along with your old farts, your Duchesnes, your Sagans, your Bens, that's 3 lines of scoring, which Colorado doesn't have. So either way, I mean, it's phenomenal playoff hockey. It's just the beauty of the battle for each puck. So we'll see what happens in Colorado.
Yeah. And one that's definitely surprised me, not that it's 2-2, but just how good the games have been on like a singular basis, is Vegas, Minnesota, who's currently tied 2-2. They do play tonight. But Kirill Kaprizov looks like an like beyond stud in this first round. He has the ability. He looks like he has the ability to just embarrass Aiden Hill in net. Um, and he's just been great. I think the young kids for Minnesota have been playing great. They've definitely surprised me in this matchup. I didn't think it was going to be a sweep, but I thought overall with Vegas's veterans and maybe their size and how aggressive they play, that they would kind of, even if Minnesota got wins, wouldn't it would be more like Vegas dominated within the 60 minutes. But I feel like it's been pretty even.
Yeah, I'll definitely go along with that. Gustafson's played out of his mind. He's played really well, and Hill is just Hill. You expect, you know, most of that team in front of him to help him out a lot, and at times that hasn't happened. And as far as Krill, I mean, Krill's Krill. He's got Baldy on his side. They'll be 30 million under the cap at the start of free agency this year. So just wait until he gets another rolling partner on the other side that isn't a 36-year-old Zuccarello.
So what we're saying is Mitch Marner is going to be a Minnesota Wild.
I'm saying they can extend Krill at 14 mil and pick up Marner for 14 mil. So, and then they don't have come out into a problem until their young defensemen need to get paid. But I digress about that. Yeah, Minnesota has impressed me. They're solid. They've always been able to play physical and play hard, But you just think Big Bad Vegas, at the end of the day, they just have their way with you, and that hasn't happened completely yet. Big Game 5 for them also. That'll be later tonight. We'll see what happens. They've already won one in Vegas, so they definitely know that they can.
And then final one in the West, we have my favorite, which I thought was going to be easy for my guys in Los Angeles. And Evan Bouchard has proved me that it wasn't going to be as easy. We've got Los Angeles and Edmonton tied up 2-2. Crusty, what are your thoughts?
Series should be over. That's my thought. The main thought with this is Chicago Blackhawks did it in 2015. But you can't play 4 defensemen. And that's basically what LA is doing. They're playing 4 defensemen. Their third pair doesn't get more than like 5 or 6 minutes. It's too long of a series. You've already had some overtime. You're chasing around, the fastest player in the league and the best player in the league. That's where my thought process is. They're beating them in every other way except it comes to the third period. And I watched Drew Doughty the last game, and it's just the legs weren't there. And he had the legs in the first 2 periods. But after you've already clocked him in at like 20-something minutes before the third period starts, that's a huge problem. I don't know what you do from a coaching aspect, but I think you just have to roll with the punches, and you're going to have to play that third pairing when you can. You'll be at home tonight, so figure out time to get them a little bit. If you need to play the game of jumping people on and jumping people off, then go ahead and do that. You know that once the third pair comes out, Edmonton's game plan is to get McDavid out there. But oh well, you've got to find a way to give them minutes. That's my biggest takeaway that really nobody's talking about. I got this stupid stuff that just popped up. Can you see me?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, that's excellent. Besides that, there's not fantastic goaltending on either side. LA is what we thought LA was. They're 3 lines deep to score. And Edmonton is Edmonton. They'll get ship-ins, but you just got to stop McDavid. And I'm going to be really pissed off if Edmonton advances the fact that, Corey Perry's on the wing with McDavid. But Bouchard's played really well. Their defense has played well. LA's got to find a way to close it out. I mean, they're going to come. And my suggestion is you need to figure out good ways to get that third pair to eat up some minutes, or find some younger defensemen that maybe you can trust more. But if you play the 4D again like you have, it's going to end up being the same outcome. But again, you're at home, you got last change, so maybe a better way to get them out there a little bit.
Yeah. Jumping over to the East, as of right now, Carolina is up 3-1 in the series. However, they are tied 4-4 in the game currently. So this may change later on in the episode. But, I mean, as we talked about last week, New Jersey's kind of just outgassed compared to Carolina. They've got a lot of guys injured. They've got a lot of guys that are only putting in 50% because they have so many guys that are injured. As much as I do like the Devils, New Jersey's a little bit of a mess right now, and Carolina's capitalizing.
Yeah, and there's that again.
I will say the first goal of tonight's game was by Dawson Mercer.
Of course it was. I was going to put that in a parlay, and I ended up not. New Jersey was also up 3-0 in this game, and they couldn't hold the lead. Then went up 4-3. So it's just they're too outmatched. So we can move on.
Yeah. Let's see. No, the last three that we have been pretty feisty in terms of their matchups. Uh, Next one we have is the Battle of Ontario with our Toronto and Ottawa. Currently in the game right now, there's about 13 minutes left in the third period, and Ottawa's up 1-0. So similar to Carolina and New Jersey, this may change later on in the show. But right now, I think Ottawa had one game. They kind of got all their extra juice, and Brady went full Brady. But aside from that, I think Ottawa has, like we said last week, Ottawa has talented pieces, but I don't think their pieces are enough to match up against how much Toronto has.
Probably not. But you also look at it as
It's
two
Toronto.
two of those games were overtime games, which means you played them tough, right? You played them into overtime the other two, and it's overtime. It can go either way. And again, all you need to do is win tonight, and it changes the whole complexion of everything. Toronto starts burning. They start worrying. There's throwing up going all over. It's fantastic. So from my perspective, I'd love to see nothing better than an Ottawa win tonight,
Mm-hmm.
just to see the craziness that is Toronto.
Yeah. And next one, because I'm going to save our favorite for last. You've got the Washington Montreal matchup, which has gotten very feisty, very spicy. And yes, friends, I have watched that Tom Wilson clip at least 500 times because as a former theater kid, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of credit for this series. His composure and his aggressiveness. As I told you before, I believe this is a beautiful series for the Habs. This is a coming out series. It's a learning series. The end of the last game, Lane Hudson learned a couple things. Um, Sometimes when there's not a play, take the safest play. Um, he's learning in this league. They've matched Washington's physical play. I'll say that they've gone toe to toe without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
They've been rocking people's worlds. So a fantastic on them. At the end of the day, Washington has Dylan Strome. And if you notice one thing about Dylan Strome is he's an incredibly intelligent hockey player. He makes everybody around him better. So that's been the other nugget that I give out as far as this series. He's a great setup, man. You go to the space, you go to the open ice, he will find you. And that's all you need to do. And of course, bury it, and it helps when you can finish. But,
Right.
I was really hoping that the Habs would pull out that other one. I would have really liked to seen that at 2-2, but it's too high of a hill for them to climb now. So it is what it
I think
is.
it's a great learning opportunity because I think there were a few. My memory is not the greatest from the last time that when the Habs made the deep playoff run to the finals, but most of the younger kids weren't there, at least to my memory. Um, this is a great learning opportunity for those younger kids of kind of what playoff hockey and the intensity and the expectation is.
Exactly. It's huge for them. They've got some young defensemen. They've got young forwards. Suzuki has still looked really good. Cole Caulfield is a superstar. He might not be the biggest player around, but God, he finishes. He'll be a heartbreaker.
When you have Slavkovsky with you, you really don't need to be the biggest player around.
Well, exactly. You just like any team, that's still the buzzword with the Hawks right now is where's that big guy? You only need 3 of them. Okay. At the end of the day, you only need 3 of them, but one of them's got to play in your top 6. And I mean, you see what Josh Anderson does, what he brings, and that's just being a big body. Because come this time, you've got to step up. So
I'm pretty sure the big guy just got transferred to Boston University, and we don't know how much he got paid for it.
yes, that's what we're hoping. Sasha, we are definitely hoping is one of our big guys. And again, they've got Huey, Dewey, and Louie, whatever, the guy in net now, and he's looked really well.
Which one?
Doers or Doos or
Dobbs.
Dobbs? Yes, Dobbs. Okay.
Jumping to
2-0 Senators.
Excellent.
Your
Excellent.
Dylan Cousin with a shorthanded goal. Uh-oh, a shorthanded goal. That means that unbelievable, that, oh my God, we are changing the world. 5-forward power play didn't have a defenseman back. Go on.
Jumping to my favorite matchup, because this matchup has Tomo Rutu, even though I haven't been able to watch it because I'm poor, but Krusty's been able to see Rutu on the screen. And that's what matters really about playoff hockey. Is if I'm not at the United Center watching playoff hockey, at least Tomo Rutu is behind the bench during playoff hockey. Tampa is, or not, sorry, not Tampa. Florida is currently up 3-1 in the series. It was a very, very aggressive game last night. It came out that Aaron Ekblad is being suspended for 2 games on the hit to Brandon Hagel, which was completely warranted and should have gotten a penalty in the game as well, because that was wild. But more importantly, to piss off Blackhawk Meathead Nation, Seth Jones with 1 goal, +1, and 26 minutes and 16 seconds during that game. Maybe he wasn't the problem.
Yeah, we still got everybody going after that. I don't want to rehatch any of that, but he was not the problem.
Well, I'm petty and it's my show, so we're just going to point it out.
Okay. Bless me. Yeah, the series in general has been unbelievable. That game last night was unbelievable. I don't like the headshots. The Ekblad one, I can't believe wasn't a 5-minute major. And the other hit, I can't believe he wasn't suspended too. That's a guy on his knees, defenseless, right against the boards, and you crushed his head against it. I think they did Florida a little bit of a favor in not giving both of them a game. But then again, Seth Jones would have just played the whole game and it would have been okay.
So you're saying then Florida would have won 5-1 if Seth Jones played the whole game?
Could be. These are 2 big boys. Tampa doesn't back away from anyone. Tampa is not the biggest team in the league either. But they all hit hard. Watching Cooper behind the net or behind the bench, after that wasn't called and they went up 2-1 was priceless. Both of these coaches are emotional. They're into it. The mutual respect that they each have is phenomenal. It's exactly what the game's about. Even Cooper, it's playoff hockey. You want me to comment who should be? It's not my job. Listen, these are all grown men trying to basically kill each other to put the puck in the net. What are you going to do? And I love the fact of both coaches are basically the same way. They're not calling anything out press wise. They understand that this is a battle. Let up a little bit and you lose. Florida came back. Ekblad looked fantastic. He was really bringing it in the third period, and you could tell he had legs.
Maybe from the illegal hits.
Nah, probably more or less that he had to sit out the last 20. It always gives you something to think about. Matthew Tkachuk sat out the last 20. There's something too, if you can rest your players, you might want to rest them. Does it continue with Ekblad? I don't know. We won't know for the next 2 games. We know that. I can't imagine this one being over, but I mean, I'm silly enough to bet against Florida. I just, again, it's 3-1 now. You're telling me Tampa needs to beat Florida 3 games in a row against the Bob? Again, it's like all the rest of this. It's too tall of an ask. You needed that one last night.
Definitely. More NHL, not in the playoffs, but definitely some speculation that we need to do because there's a lot of open positions in the NHL right now when it comes to head coaches, including us. But we're going to speculate everybody's because it's fun and we like to gossip here. So, as of right now, at the time of recording on Tuesday, you have an open spot in Philly, Pittsburgh, New York, Chicago, Seattle, and Anaheim. Did I miss any? And yeah, no, that's it.
Okay, if you say so. It's your show. I'm just
The
here
new
for my looks.
and newly added today, Vancouver. Tocchet has parted ways with the Vancouver Canucks. It was speculated that Rutherford tried to give him a great offer, and Tocchet said, "You know what? It's time for me to look at new opportunities." Maybe he just saw the ungodly, awkward press conference that Rutherford had last week when it comes to Quinn Hughes and said, "You know what? I'm going to dip out."
Very well could be.
Because what was that?
As far as the Rutherford, I am unsure. It's probably not the best route to put that kind of pressure and spotlight on your cornerstone of your organization, which is basically what you did. You really put him in the limelight, saying he doesn't want to be here. Hey, fan base, that guy doesn't want to play for you. You didn't need to do that. Um, I don't know what he was thinking.
I don't think he was thinking.
I mean, it's Vancouver. I understand you've got nut jobs left and nut jobs right, but I I don't know what he was thinking. Unless he figured he can shame the kid into staying through that. And that
That's
tactic doesn't work that much on the younger generation. Um, they've been taught at a young age to not be manipulated like that. Or at least I believe a lot of people have. And,
I
that's
definitely agree. I mean, you see that with Gaudier being traded from Philly to Anaheim. You saw that with McGroarty.
yeah.
In terms of management is not the big bad all powerful as they once were.
Yeah, but
Players are starting to have autonomy.
both of those I consider more of the player almost forcing the issue because he wasn't getting what he thought was deserved. And as far as those two players, neither of those two players deserved much. Quentin Hughes, on the other hand,
Deserves everything.
deserves everything and deserves to be treated with a little bit of respect. And I think you almost hit a disrespect button or going, this is all you. Well,
Right.
no, you constructed a very dysfunctional team. That's on you.
Yeah.
You let a situation fester forever. That's on you.
I wonder
You've
that too because Tocchet made a reference to it during his exit interview about how there were other things that were going on that we had no idea about.
well, Tocchet should have had an idea that he had dysfunction in the locker room. He
No,
had
in
to.
terms of that we didn't have as the outside fan base,
Right.
that there was even more dysfunction than what we were privy to.
Yeah, but you have constant drama about players. I mean, Brock Bresser, another thing. Your JT Miller, that went on for 2 years. Are we going to sign him this? you haven't handled yourself well. That's what Rutherford needs to own part of that. And calling out the young kid probably did not help him. Maybe that was his way of saying, we're open for business. This thing's going to get blown up again, which is, to a Vancouver fan base, probably the last thing you want to hear.
Right.
So, but oh well, that's the way it is in the crazy hockey world.
That is true. That being said, Crusty, what do you think Vancouver needs in their next coach?
Jesus.
Because
I
I
don't.
feel like they are in a similar boat with Chicago, where they need someone who is going to put more structure in. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Vancouver gets kind of one of the guys with older mentality that's kind of been throughout the league. Your Laviolette, your Torts, your not that I think Torts is going to go to Vancouver, but someone that has had years of experience, and I don't think they go the young route. Or on the flip side, they do go the young route if none of those guys want to go into that shit show.
Um, Off the cuff, I think they go the young route. I think if you want to make things right, you might have a 5-minute phone call with Quentin Hughes. And what does he think? Because face the facts, everything's gone if he walks.
Yeah.
So you better include him. I mean, he's too dynamic of a player, and I'm not a big proponent of players getting any say in a coach. But that is such a dysfunctional shit show that I don't think you can make it any worse. But I think they would have to inject some youth. And why not have a little bit of a younger coach? I think if you bring in a Torts or Torts like, I think things just get worse. Again, you start to look at it, there's not a lot of talent there. I mean, Patterson has played well and then hasn't. I mean, Connor Garland's Connor Garland. He's a tiny little midget that plays his balls off and can play pretty gosh darn good hockey. But if that's a cornerstone piece for you, you're not going to be very good. So I don't know. Um, I mean, the top coaches won't go near that. I can tell you that. Maybe a Bruce Boudreau, something like that. He wants to still work.
If but he just was there.
Yeah.
Remember they
So
fired
you're
him
saying that Boudreau
because
couldn't
they
go
were
back
trying to
to a
make.
place where he was already at?
I don't think so. You saw the interview with him where it was like ownership was trying to force him to make a defenseman a forward, and he's like, "This is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard." I think he's comfortable with where he's at. I don't think he steps back into that shit show because honestly, what's changed? You're not in a position where you have complete control. It's not like the Dale Talon rehire when Florida realized how much they messed up. You're walking straight back into that position with management being a crapshoot.
Then maybe somebody like a Gallant, but something like that. Somebody who wants to still work and his phone isn't ringing off the hook. Or do maybe a Quinn. Maybe David Quinn is a younger coach who's got more of a freelance style who definitely would take the job. That's what you're talking about in Vancouver.
Maybe
I don't think that's appealing to anyone.
jumping straight south into Anaheim, there's been a lot of rumors,
Yeah,
but
buddy.
nothing's been announced yet. Is that our former coach Quinville may have another job?
What are they going to do in Anaheim? They're going to grow the mustache. That's right. Grow the mustache.
I think as much as I don't like him to come back into the NHL, I'm going to make that very clear. I don't think him and Stan should have occupations in the NHL forever. It fits. It absolutely fits. It gives me 2009 terror flashbacks with how much it fits. Because Chicago, ideally, you need that again.
Yeah, and we have a different take on the punishment for Q, the punishment for Stan. We've talked about that at length. I believe he will be taking that job. I believe he sees his stacked centerman. Um, I believe he will tell them to get Zegers out of there, or the first practice he'll sit down with Zegers and go, "You can't do this every shift. You'll be gone, or I'll just sit you. I'll sit you and give you crap minutes, and your next contract will be shit." And that's also something Q would do. So it's a perfect fit. They're ready to take the next step. That's a pretty darn good young decor again, with a couple of badass defensemen thumping on the back end also. So yeah, I think it's a done deal. That's a Q spot.
It makes complete sense. Next is us, which
Us.
we've talked about. We're on the Todd Nelson train. I've been on the Todd Nelson train since day one. And I love that other people are getting on the Todd Nelson train. It makes me feel cool, mainly just because I like when I have correct opinions.
Senators up 3-0.
Nice.
Empty net goal with there is now 2 minutes to go. So
Nice. I like Nelson, but also if I don't get that, I'm fine with Sullivan. I'm fine with Woodcroft. I could even see Woodcroft going to Vancouver or Seattle. We gotta jump back to Seattle. I forgot about them. But I want Todd Nelson.
yeah, we've both been pushing that. I've been behind you since you mentioned the Todd Nelson. And again, you chat enough, people start to jump on your bandwagon. Happens a lot with this show. They hear things here and go, "Oh, that's a good idea. We know who you are." Woodcroft would be fine. I'm not going to lie. I listened to another podcast today because I thought they were going to go over their coaching, blah blah, and it was a lot of just talking. But they did mention maybe the Tampa assistant.
Halpern,
Yeah, which I would be okay with that also.
get that Florida stuff away from me.
Um,
I don't
but
want
as I said,
anyone associated with John Cooper on my team, including John Cooper.
I know Woodcroft believes in his system. He expects you to play a certain way. We've already discussed Todd Nelson is that guy, but that we've been over this. That has to happen. Accountability has to come back in the locker room, and that's a tall ask when you've had 3 years of no accountability. It's going to be sticker shock for some of these younger kids.
Yeah.
Who are, well, no, you're just supposed to like pat me on the back and say everything's going to be okay. Somebody else is going to be coming in there, hopefully. Or, as I'm stating before, this is still Kyle's team. And I guarantee whoever comes is not going to be able to bring his own staff. And that kills who you can get to come coach this team. And that means more of the same. So we'll see. Hopefully it's Todd Nelson. Again, Woodcraft I would be okay with also.
Jumping back to Seattle, we've discussed this a little bit. I don't think Seattle knows what to do as much as I think everybody has Ron Francis on a pedestal. I think he does need to take.
Everybody might not. I do.
Well, there's a lot of people that do have Ron
Well, they
Francis on
do,
a
and there's
pedestal.
good reason.
Absolutely. I
He-
do think that he needs, after, firing your head coach and then giving yourself a Stan Bowman promotion in the same day, I think you do need to have a bit of accountability that you really don't know where your team's going. You really don't have an identity. You don't have a ton in the pipeline. You've got a lot of guys locked up in weird contracts, and Matty Beniers really has nobody to play with. And you don't have another number 2 or even number 1 if you want to put Joey Decord at number 2. You don't have another solid goaltender with Joey Decord. That being said, I think Woodcroft goes to Seattle.
Well, I mean, he would like to. I don't know. I don't know how petty people are. I know how petty I am. So, I mean, Seattle interests me just for the fact that I get to be in the same division as Edmonton. I get the same time zone as Edmonton. I'd love nothing more than to say, hey, I believed in my system. It wasn't my fault that in my system, all of a sudden, a goaltender couldn't stop a beach ball. But I don't. I've got to figure an AHL head coach is
Are
a
you
little bit.
kidding? I'm
No,
convinced every man in sports is the definition of petty.
no. I believe they use pettiness to motivate, but at the end of the day, I don't think so. But again, um, I'd like to go back to Anaheim for a second. Just want to point out that I hope to God I'm there for that game when he comes back. Because the cues that should be raining down will completely show Kyle Davidson exactly what he's up against as much as he wants to distance himself from the dynasty team. Because there's just a ton of Q love out there. Not for the handling of a certain situation, but the rest of it, oh, heck yeah. So Seattle, I think out east, I think everything lines up, but out west, it's kind of iffy. So I'll go with the iffies. I do not know this.
We don't know. Jumping over to the East, we've got both Pennsylvania teams out of head coach. Mike Sullivan has parted ways with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I assume Mike Sullivan goes to the New York Rangers.
I would assume so. Talk is also Boston, but that's a return trip to Boston. I would assume it's the Rangers. He's going to have his pick of where he wants to go. I can tell you that.
Oh, definitely.
That's a well-respected coach.
I think Pittsburgh's new head coach, though, and I will say this with locking with Philly, even though I think Philly's number 1 is Tocchet, as the rumors have already been circling. And as much as I love Todd Nelson and want him to come to Chicago, I wouldn't be surprised if he at least gets an interview with either or both Pennsylvania teams.
Oh, they'd be really stupid if they didn't. I mean, yeah, Tocchet is just everything points that way. It's just too much. And as I said, Tocchet and Jones, who's the GM, they're pretty buddy. This is the old boys group getting back together, seeing if they can't right the ship a little bit, understanding that. I mean, as far as Philly's concerned, that's a lot of. We went from Pittsburgh, basically glossed over, went to Philly, but you've got some young talent there. So you've got something to work with. Rangers, definitely Sullivan. I think if he wants the job, it's his. Pittsburgh, another thing I don't know. What is their direction?
And I think Pittsburgh's in a similar situation, slightly different because at the end of the day, that's Sid's team, but also at the end of the day, that's Kyle's team. I think whoever comes into Pittsburgh's, maybe between Kyle Dubas and Sidney Crosby and the other veterans, who knows if the person that comes into Pittsburgh has full control.
Correct. You have to make a decision on what you're going to do, but you can't completely rebuild because your 4 people all have no trade clauses. You got to re-sign Sid, right? Sid won't want to leave. I believe he'd almost look at his backstabbing Pittsburgh, and I don't think it's in Sid's makeup. He's a good guy. But then you can't get any players for Malkin. You can't get anything for Carlson. You can't. So how do you rebuild? Very difficult. How do you? So you're talking about you want to piece together a team and bring in a coach that can deliver that. Maybe that is a Todd Nelson. At the end of the day, their maneuvers almost seemed like Washington's maneuvers. You grabbed certain pieces that you thought all of a sudden would make this thing okay. All of Washington pieces worked out real well, and all of Pittsburgh's wet the bed. How that Hayes kid can never be somewhat of a force is beyond me. So I'm going to have to be in Torts' camp where he saw something, where he was like, this is a guy who doesn't bring it all the time. Because with everything else, he should be at least be a pretty darn good. He should be an incredible third line center and a darn good second line center. And he just hasn't delivered. And you can't count on Malkin being healthy. But I would assume Dubas tries to make them relative. I don't know. He's in a really tough spot.
It's weird.
It is weird. I think somebody like a Todd Nelson is where you want to go. You need somebody to get along with the kids a little bit better. You don't need a stern coach because you have Sidney Crosby.
Right.
Just like I stated back when, Luke Richardson's first year with the Hawks, and everybody talked about how, well, he was a really good coach because nobody gave up on that team. And at the end of the day, I think everybody figured out, well, that's because Jonathan Taves was on that team.
Do you think Luke could get a phone call?
I can't imagine that Luke gets a phone call. So, but I do not know. It's possible. I don't think so. I think he's
Luke. I could see him in Seattle, just going from one shit show to another shit show.
That's possible. I think Luke is going to have to work himself back up through the ranks. The only other person that I've always been wondering about is your Jamie Compton, who's probably has 5 Stanley Cup rings as an assistant. Remember Compton? We had him for a year in 2013. The assistant coach. He was assistant on LA.
Oh yeah.
He's an assistant for who right now? He's an assistant for somebody. Who is he the assistant for? You're supposed to be looking that up now, but I guess you won't. So okay. Where we were at Pittsburgh. Yeah. It just they need a coach. I think they dip into the AHL or give somebody their first shot who's an assistant. That's just my take. Because as I said, there's certain things you don't have to do. You don't have to demand respect because you've already got a player that demands it. And that's not going to change. When you see a 37-year-old guy busting his nut and he's already a Hall of Famer, everybody else kind of follows suit. So, who else do we got?
That's it.
Okay.
Jumping to Rockford, because, guys, we're out of the play-in round. We start our first round against Milwaukee on Thursday when this episode comes out. We said this last week. We said it the week before. But we're going to say it again this week. Drew Commesso is a stud. Drew Commesso is a rock star. And if you watch Drew Comesso's media after his shutout against the Chicago Wolves, it will make you love Drew Commesso even more.
Yeah, so I mean, they have the ability to maybe do an upset in this round, the only way will be it shouldered on Drew. But that's an exciting decor down there with Core and with Artie. The rest are just pieces for the
Yeah,
most part.
Core kind of gave you the middle finger during that second game during the playing round too.
Gave who the middle finger?
You.
Yeah, well, Core's going to have to give out a lot more middle fingers to win me over. So, sorry about that, Core. I'm your worst critic. But he has the ability to take over occasionally. Will he? I don't know. I mean, they're not loaded down there, that's for sure. So, but it'll be at least 3 more games, and it'll be darn good for that decor to get 3 more games, and it'll be very good for Drew Comesso to get 3 more games. And hey, it's hockey, man. You don't know. Things could all of a sudden start to click. I haven't seen crap from the gut punch. Maybe the gut punch all of a sudden starts to dial it in some more. The only other thing that I haven't heard is what happened to Athanasiou? He just went away?
I think he went away when Aiden Thompson started playing.
I just find that a little weird, and I heard a comment on it which seemed really funny and maybe spot on. Is the fact that, well, he's got an NHL contract. He's already done getting paid. So maybe you just figure, why should I
Senators
play?
win 4-0.
Huh?
Sens win.
All right. A game 6 back in Ottawa. Oh, sticks held a little tighter. I'm really hoping to watch that second goal, just because, oh my God, it was like the second coming of Jesus when they were talking about this power play. And the fact that they had a shorthanded goal scored against them shows you the problem with having 5 forwards up there.
That is true. All right.
And that was the other thing I didn't mention during the Florida part of the telecast that we had here, but that penalty kill is off the hook. So go on with Rockford.
All right. Well, it's time, friends, for the second week of our Blackhawk lore. And this week, well, last week we talked about Crusty Old Guy's favorite game. This week we're going to jump 1 year prior to my favorite game. Once I can find the stats for that game. Goodness gracious.
Uh-oh, Hockey Princess not prepared.
I am. There we go. We've got it. Picture this. 2009. Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals. It's May 11th, 2009 specifically. Final score between Chicago and Vancouver. Chicago 7, Vancouver 5. That was probably the loudest. I mean, the only ever time I heard it louder was the Nashville game that we talked about last week, and then when Crusty and I were there when they won the Cup in 2015. But up until that point, this game was probably the loudest I've ever heard the United Center. For those who were not around, maybe not born yet, maybe really don't remember, the rivalry between Vancouver and Chicago was intense. You had multiple matchups, usually every year during Dynasty, or at least in the beginning of the Dynasty. You would match up against Vancouver. And I hated Vancouver at that point. I'm cool with them now, but it's mainly because of Quinn Hughes. But you hated Vancouver, and Vancouver hated to play in the United Center. There were videos of all of the Canucks players. They would play jokingly Chelsea Dagger to them, and they would immediately get so angry. It was fantastic. They hated each other. So you had 2 goals from Jonathan Taves, a goal from Adam Burish, a Chris Versteeg, and most importantly, and why it is my favorite game, the first hat-trick game in existence. It was fantastic. I remember the newspapers the day after And it was probably, no, it was, I would say, because this was the first year that we went, it was the first game where I was kind of like, oh shit. Um, I would say Nashville is probably that second game where you realize kind of where you are and what this has the potential to be. But, before then, I had just seen them lose a lot. So it was a really cool thing to be a part of. It was probably the only time that I got sick of hearing Chelsea Dagger because we scored 7 goals, but also just because the intensity of the rivalry was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, for those watching the playoffs now, you're watching Florida Tampa. It was Florida Tampa. It was nastiness everywhere. They had who? Kelser,
Kessler, Bieksa, the Sidney
Kessler, and
twins.
I mean, and Kessler was a motherfucker, no doubt about it. And Bieksa was a mother, but it was nonstop. And the wildest thing is the rivalry was so intense, the hatred was so intense, and your cornerstone from on the back end is two British Columbian kids who have to go back in the summer to Vancouver. I'd love to sit down with either a Duncan Keith and a Brent Seabrook and just go over the difficulties of that. It's your hometown and this and that. And especially for Duncan Keith, you are public enemy number one. Um, we had the sisters on that team for Vancouver and who were great players, but God, we loved giving them crap. We call them the little princesses and everything. But it was just nonstop. And it was the first time that a lot of people really got into the complete intensity of the playoffs again. That's for sure.
I also think, especially during that, maybe even starting with this matchup, like how much you started, and that was one of my favorite things about the 2010 team, is how much their success was truly a collaborative effort from everybody on the roster. Yes, you did have superstars, Ian Kane and Taves, but there were so many moments in the regular season and crucial moments in the postseason where it was other guys having their special moments too.
Oh, most definitely. The 2010 team was just stacked. It was just unbelievably stacked. And, as I like to point out for your listeners, as far as somebody like you, most people haven't dealt with what you've dealt with is you were at games where there wasn't cheering during the anthem. Things had gotten so dark and so bad that I remember me telling you they used to just scream during the anthem, and you sat there going, "What? What did they do?" I go, "You'd yell the whole time," and I think you even said, "No, they didn't." I said, "Yes, they used to," and that was, 9 was the coming back to that complete craziness. Basically, it happened in 8, but we'll say 9. But yeah, that was, I mean, it was the solidifying of Patrick Kane being a superstar.
Yeah.
Um, Superstars are born in the playoffs. Superstars put a team on their back and say, listen, things are tight. I will finish.
And he did exactly that because throughout that entire game, and again, probably one of the reasons why it was my favorite game was it wasn't, one team was up by 4 and then the other team caught up and then it was kind of a back and forth. It was back and forth with scoring and just skating from one side of the ice to the other for the full 60.
Yeah. And again, the Hawks were such a deep team that they would come at you in waves and waves and waves. The game has gotten away from that a little bit with the amount of ping pong that is the NHL now, where everybody hits that high chip shot out of the zone to alleviate pressure and everything. Um, but yeah, it was a crazy game. It was when you really knew that the team was special, that things could actually
Work.
work and go to the promised land. And that was 09, right?
Yeah, that was 09.
And, they had just had a series that they weren't supposed to win and really rattled a lot of superstars on Calgary the series before. And they went with another exclamation point on this
Oh my
series.
God, that was my favorite. Where Jerome McGinley was like, these kids are not giving me the respect that I deserve. Oh my God, it was hilarious.
Yeah, one of the few times that I'm sure again Leah was like, probably shouldn't have said that. But you get caught. I think everybody is a little bit more guarded with these silly interviews now, where I don't think he was that guarded at that point in time, and
No.
and that was it. The kids just didn't care, and one of the main culprits was 88. He loved stirring trouble. I mean, he wasn't going to do it physically, but he'd jab you with a stick, and there's this little kid scoring on you, mouthing off to you like crazy. They got out of their game plan because they were so furious with the man. When Showtime started to happen, it infuriated the old guard. They couldn't stand it. And he took even more pleasure in that. And, again, that's one of the things that we don't have right now on this team. But who knows? Maybe at some point in time. But yeah, that game was the epitome of what was to come. That just no lead was safe.
No.
At no point were these guys out of it, and it was the birth of the Showtime.
All right. And that is it for this week.
Oh, I got something else.
Oh, you do?
Since there's nobody else still listening, so this is just more between me
Yes.
and you. But I did. I talked to a friend who is a Milwaukee Bucks season ticket holder, and he has the same problem we do. But I guess in basketball, there is no even thought of etiquette. People just get up and down the whole time. So he's got to constantly deal with that. And he says it doesn't bother him that much until, like the fourth quarter when everything's really needs to be decided. He's then got to mouth off to people going, now you got to get up. So we bonded over the anger of not understanding your surroundings and the importance of a game for a rabid fan base. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah.
That was all.
No worries. Just as a reminder, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, however you watch or listen to us on a ramble on a weekly basis. Now is the time to send in your questions, folks, because it's the off season for us Blackhawk fans, and we really genuinely do enjoy answering your guys' questions.
Yes. Do you have a question about meditation? Bring it on. We can go over various types of meditation and how to just center yourself a little better.
And on that note, that is all, and we will talk at you guys next